was a nice picture.
Oh, thank you.
Your hair looks really bananas.
Really?
Yeah, it's going like in a few different directions. So
I'm
that's
like
better.
I'm like a troll doll.
Yeah, you are like a troll doll. Oh my
Or am
God.
I just a troll? Just trolling
Maybe,
the internet.
yeah, what kind of troll are you?
I don't know. That would be a whole other, I don't know.
Whole
That'd be
other
a whole other
podcast.
podcast.
Exactly. What kind
Anyways,
of troll are you?
I don't know, but I'm a sexy ass troll. I don't know.
Okay.
The
Welcome to Getting
trolliest,
Juicy.
the trolliest with the juiciest, the mostiest. I have no idea. Welcome to Getting Juicy. That is right.
That is correct, folks. That is correct.
Oh
And
my
your
god.
your lights are giving us a show back there.
Yes, I got them all getting juicified.
Yeah, look at that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
With the
I know.
yellow, the I always want to say the cayenne pepper color.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Oh,
I know we always forget, so I want to get this in really quickly.
thank
So
you.
I'm sure Rachel and I are going to do some pre-recording and put this in, but for the time being, we are on the website Buy Me a Coffee. And Buy Me a Coffee is simply as it sounds. You can go on and donate to us and have the ability to help support us to help with our production or applying to different media contests to get our podcasts out there, to help us with recording equipment, or even just actually buying us a coffee, so that way we can stay caffeinated, whether if it's independent or corporate. So
Yeah.
so it's buymeacoffee.com/getting juicy. And if you are listening to us for the first time, then you can check how to spell getting juicy. But if you are returning to us, you'll probably know how to spell by at this point in our podcast after almost 100 episodes.
And you can support Hero's habit of going to Starbucks and therefore getting those containers of plastic about 50 times a day.
Yes,
Just
and you
kidding.
can support my
Okay.
Starbucks name, which is Ricardo now.
And I'm only saying that too because Hero and I finally got together in the same city for more than just one night. It was like consecutive. He came and stayed with me
It was a
where I lived.
4-night stand,
It was a
everybody,
4-nighter
without
and
benefits.
without benefits, absolutely. Wasn't even an option. We were in completely separate bedrooms. Anyway, but I did definitely start to realize what kind of Starbucks habit Hero has.
Very much so.
It was like, and because I took the recycling out today because it was recycling day, and I looked at my recycling, I was like, holy heck,
Not
that
that you
is
have
a
a big
lot of.
recycling.
You didn't see our recycling outside.
Oh
We
no,
take it
okay.
outside. We don't just gather it under the sink. We take it and
Oh,
there's a huge bin outside. It was like a week's worth of recycling.
I
But
know.
anyway, I looked out there and I was like, yeah, that's a lot of Starbucks. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep.
And it was only 4 days.
I know. And you help contribute to that. So thank you.
I did. Otherwise, I'm right back to like, making my coffees at home. But thank you. Yeah. And I hope it's okay. We say thank you, Ricardo. We can
Yeah,
bleep this out if he
absolutely.
doesn't. I think
No,
he's
it'd be totally fine.
okay. I think he's a supporter of
Oh
the
yeah.
show and he wouldn't mind that we say that. So thank you, Ricardo, for you'll be like, who the hell is Ricardo? People listening. But
Ricardo's our shadow investor.
maybe one day you'll learn more about Ricardo. Right now we'll just say thank you, Ricardo, for the
Yeah,
coffee.
thank you. Thank you. Muchas
Yes.
gracias, Ricardo.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
Rachel, I mean, I was gonna say, but you kind of blew it. I was gonna say it's
Oh
been so
no.
long since I've seen you.
Well, I didn't
But
blow it,
but
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 yeah.
no, yeah, no, I just saw Rachel and I'm surprised that she didn't like kick me out sooner because I can be a lot of extra.
That's why I'm drinking whiskey because I saw him
Um,
yesterday and I'm still recovering. So no, but it's interesting how when you see, well, first of all, we haven't actually hosted anybody just because of COVID and stuff like that over the years. We haven't actually hosted anyone in our house for quite a while. And we were going to more recently, but then my husband and I did actually get COVID about 6 weeks ago or so when we were supposed to have his parents come up. So Hero was like the first guest we've had in a couple of years, for like a multi-night guest. And so, you just kind of get used to, again, hosting people, right? Not just talking about like a dinner. Okay, we've had dinners with people, but have people stay over. You're like,
yeah.
okay, well, that's what that's like. Okay, you almost forget. And no offense to Hero, this is not, it could be with anybody, but you don't really realize how tiring it can be too. And then, he leaves yesterday. And of course, then you do all the cleaning and the bedding and then this and then that. And then you're like, okay, now got the house back to myself. Okay. That was, but it's, and that's only one person.
Yeah.
so you forget what it's like to host people, right? So,
Mhm.
and also, and even though like, Hero and I are so close, we know each other ridiculously well. You have to you get back into the habit now of entertaining somebody, even if you don't realize you're doing it. Like, of course I
Yep.
was playing, the kind of tour guide, right?
Totally. Yep.
So, and then you get excited about showing people the place you call home, because he hadn't seen it before. So that was cool. We did get to see some alpacas. So his
Oh my God, they're
favorite
so amazing.
animal, some alpacas.
We got
What
to eat
else?
some sushi.
We got to eat some sushi. What we didn't get to do, and a lovely, oh, now I forget her name. I always don't want to give people's names on the show if they don't want to be, you know, uh, um, talked about necessarily, but somebody actually mentioned that they were looking forward to seeing us both on the same paddleboard together. Unfortunately, that didn't happen this past weekend because the weather wasn't optimal necessarily for that, but it'll happen one day soon. So if
Yeah.
that person is listening now to this recording, we'll make that happen at some point, believe me. And
Oh, we
it'll
will.
be quite a gas, because,
Oh my God.
I don't even know if I never have more than myself on the board, because first of all, my old board, we would sink if the two of us were on it together. Adrienne and I almost sank, and you have to like straddle the board to make sure it doesn't flop.
Mhm.
Like, that's how unsteady it is.
Yep.
With two people. The other one maybe, but
Mhm.
anyway.
But anyways, I mean, it was amazing just to have this experience to finally see, like, your best friend, and they're of course wanting you to come see them in their hometown for 4.5, 5 years, and finally you make it there. And I mean, you know what? It was such a culture shock, as you pointed out. You warned me. It was a very cultural difference, both in city and population, in terms of visual, in terms of businesses and residential. Like, it's a very beautiful space, and what a great place to kind of settle down in, or to move and start your family with, and or if you want a smaller environment, but that's still not completely remote, where there's at least one or more Starbucks in the area. I mean, it's great.
Oh, that's how you judge. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. And this is where we differ. So I am like, if you love the outdoors, you love the Canadian outdoors, that's why you come to places like some places in the Okanagan. Or if you like, I mean, I live in a wine, region. So, and
Yeah,
here doesn't drink. So like, there's certain things, that people do come and they do up here that maybe, to each his own, right?
totally. To
But
each
I
their
do,
own. Yeah.
yeah, but it's true. Like, you come, and it's interesting because I said to Hero, like, bigger cities, and I put in quotations because maybe people that live in the States might not think Vancouver it's a big city to us, but you think of the big cities in Canada, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto,
Toronto.
right? Those, Ottawa, maybe that's up there. But the rest of Canada is these small pockets, like much smaller cities. The majority of Canada is like that, is like the
Mhm.
town that I live in now. Um,
Totally.
but mind you, even though I live in a smaller town, like, you only have to drive 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and you get to the next smaller, quote in quotation, smaller town, which actually is 3 times the size as where I live. So it's all
Yeah.
like fairly close. So, which we
Yeah.
didn't even actually get to that other place.
No, no,
Yeah.
but what I found amazing for someone that's similar to me, kind of very sheltered in their own city and is major metropolitan only, like does not like remote areas, does not like small towns where you
No.
can't see big buildings and all that stuff. It was really fascinating to see how sprawling and how many different pathways there were when we go for these rides, and how,
Yeah. Mhm.
Rachel would take me up these huge elevations and then loop around these roads or down this laneway kind of in the middle of a street, and there's like tons of property, there's animal, there's wildlife, there's orchards, there's vineyards. Like, it's literally the perfect capture the flag, like rule for your life fantasy. If people wanted to play
Yeah.
extreme cops and robbers, capture the flag, outdoor
What?
extreme sports, or zorbing, for those that know what zorbing is.
What's
In
zorbing?
it's where you put
Educate
yourself
me.
in, it's where you put yourself in that rubber, that big like
Oh
bubble
yeah.
ball in the
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
and you're the
Yeah. Yeah.
axis, and then you roll down a hill, and it's an
Yeah.
extreme sport. And I think down under, like, actually I think it's New Zealand, and if not, it's somewhere northern Europe. But I swear, if we can get sponsored by a zorbing or bubble ball company, and they were to be like, yes, please take our balls down into Vernon and roll the shit out of them, I would be so gagged.
We definitely have, yeah, definitely have that picturesque. There are these like really beautiful, like small rolling hills, And it's very, and even here was saying it's very desert-like. There's a lot of actually in the Okanagan that some of the topography, you would actually think that you might be in Arizona. Like there's some,
Yeah.
and because we get really hot summers, like there's like little cactuses and stuff like that around,
I
cacti.
know. And when Rachel was warning me about the rattlesnakes on the rail trail, I was like, girl, I should have brought my Pokeballs with me. I could have captured those fools and, we wouldn't have been able to get risked by stinging or getting poisoned. But even like the trip on the way back, not to kind of bring it back to something morbid, but when Rachel was bringing me back, I'm just highlighting like some of the things that we noticed on this trip together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was a fatal motorcyclist accident. And
It
so
wasn't a motorcycle, it was a cyclist.
Oh, a cyclist. Okay.
Cyclist.
A cyclist.
Yeah. On the way to the airport yesterday morning.
And so I'm thinking like, okay, because when you get an airport email, it says show up at your airport 2.5 hours before a flight, 3 hours if you're international. And so I'm looking at this email saying to Rachel, and I'm making fun of myself. Are you saying I have to get up like 6 fucking in the morning to get to the damn airport? Like this doesn't make sense to me if I'm flying out at whatever 10 o'clock. And Rachel's like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. There's never any traffic. We're all
there
good.
Isn't ever.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. But sure, the one time that Murphy's Law, we go, all of a sudden and then we stop by Starbucks. Rachel's like, do you want to stop by Starbucks? You're not going to be whatever. We have time. And then we get down the road and all of a sudden it's like, and Rachel looks at her phone and she's like,
I didn't even have to look at my phone. It's like, bam. No, okay, we just hit traffic.
Like steadfast.
So, okay, the 5 years I've lived here, I've never seen that before, because I guess I just happened to never, if there was an accident of something like that. So that's the thing about that one. And the one spot that the accident happened was like, because I called my husband, because when I was coming back, what would normally take me 35 minutes to get home was supposed to take me an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes. And I called my husband. I'm like, do you know of any other like ring road or anything else to, he's like, no, like that's the only spot pretty much you have to go through there. There's no alternate, just because of the nature of where the accident happened. Yeah. So yesterday morning, I basically was, instead of taking 30 minutes one way and 30 minutes back, the whole round trip I was in the car for 3 hours yesterday morning. It was
actually a 3 hour
trip. I was in the car for 3 hours yesterday morning. And then
Lord,
I came home and I had a nap, and I was supposed to start working. And I said to my boss, like, you know what? I've half a day left of vacation time that I can use up. And I'm like, I'm just going to use it and I'll work in the afternoon. Like but you know what? We're saying that, and it was a fatality. So I'm not gonna that was it was brutal.
That's what I kept saying to Rach and to myself, talk about this in symbolism of life, how we can get so caught up in the things that might be relevant to us in the short term. But if we look at this 6 months from now, it's not even going to be a thing where like, oh crap, should have gone on that road earlier, or maybe I shouldn't have gone at all. Like these are things that I realized when I was away. Like if I'm thinking of takeaways, and this is a great subject matter to talk about, whenever you leave your home, you go to a different environment, especially if we haven't been to wherever you're going before. So in my case, I haven't been to Vernon or even the Okanagan before. You learn a lot about yourself, and you also learn about kind of like your preconceived notions of what you think you might expect from an experience, and you let that go, and then you go and then you see how you are day to day. And I was there for 4 days, so you really do adapt a little bit, and you learn so much about yourself. So what I was going to ask you, even though you kind of grazed upon it, even if it's like I didn't learn anything or I didn't take anything away from that other than we had great memories, great times, lots of offline everything, and so I want to is there anything, Al, it's been 24 hours since I've been gone, 36 hours, is there anything that, even if you haven't time to think about it, have you taken anything away from that experience? Like, did you learn anything about yourself or about me, perhaps, that you
want to really know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, vice versa. It's going to come back on you too. So
what? I mean, oh God, what a question.
Right?
Well, you know what and again, it's not a slag to you. I've realized that 3 nights might've been perfect.
Yep.
4 nights was like just that little bit too long. And it was, and I said that to Adrienne, I'm like, it's not Hero. It would have been with anybody, because this is the thing. Yep. Usually too, when we're entertaining people or have people over, it's not just me, it's Adriano too. So not all the kind of weight kind of roles are goes on one person's shoulders about having to entertain or keep busy or keep the conversation going. Yeah. What I've learned about myself in general over, this whatever amount of years I've been on this earth, blah, blah, blah. We won't say what you all probably know at this point.
30.
yeah, 30 years on this planet, is that I do get tired from socializing. And I used to, so for so many years of these 30 years of my life, um, I've always forced myself, even though I feel uncomfortable in certain situations, because I want to be that, you know, extrovert. I always force myself to be an extrovert, I guess, but
Yeah.
really, and this isn't even what I've learned over this past weekend, but what I guess it just made me think about what I've learned about social environments
Mhm.
in general, is that I'm actually more of an introvert than I ever thought I was. I mean, the other thing is I work by myself at home. I spend a lot of time by myself, and I'm fairly content with that. But I pick and choose, like when I want to see people and hang out. So that was also a big deal for me to have that many consecutive days in a row with another person, rather than like, okay, one evening, okay, see you later. Then I get my like the downtime of just, which is why during the past few days, when Hero was here, I said, okay, I'm having a nap now. And it was like, I don't know, 3-4 o'clock. And I would go upstairs and just, have that. I need that. And I know that, right? So I don't know if it's something I learned that was new. It was just reinforced that was something I need. And I think, anybody who is a super anxious personality, or tends to just have, their brain spiraling a million miles per minute, needs that downtime. And we don't always realize when we need it, but we have to sometimes force ourselves to take it, because I'm also a workaholic. So I have like the opposite. I've got another side of the spectrum where I can just keep working and working and not realize, and want to please people. That's another thing, right? Please people before making sure I'm okay. And that's another thing. So yeah.
I think that's a great takeaway. I think you bring up some really good points to expand upon, including the bandwidth that we have as human beings continues to change all the time. And when you have, I would say maybe the way that we think we are in a part of our life, like socially, or social energy, or bandwidth for hosting, or bandwidth for output, those things do change over time. I mean, again, this is kind of a far stretch, but on a physical level, let's say on a bodily level, like I used to love going to theme parks and doing like
Oh
playland
yeah,
and
we
thrill
talked about
rides,
that.
roller coasters and things like that. And Rachel had no idea that I was even interested in those things,
I
because I'm
love
very,
roller coasters. Yeah.
yeah, well, this friendship and relationship in the best way possible is a roller coaster, so we're good.
Mm-hmm.
So so when we look at that, and I remember going when I'm 30 now, so what, I might have been in my early-ish mid-20s when I went back on the roller coasters and stuff with my friend after teaching yoga and being very body aware, and I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I'm
Yeah.
not the same way.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
it's funny, we didn't even, Leon, hi, we didn't even introduce you. We're like, we do have a guest coming, everybody.
My apologies. My laptop, I just came back from travels, as you know, and
Oh,
I left my charger in the hotel room and it just ran. So that's why I'm on my phone. Sorry.
oh, it's okay. But you
No
know what?
problem.
The audio is good and the visual, like everything's great. So don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, if
Yeah.
that this is okay to proceed with the vertical shot format, then
Yeah.
that should be okay.
It's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And hopefully your travels are smooth, and we're really happy to have you on and connect with us for a bit. We are recording, as you might already be aware of.
Yes.
But we would love for you to introduce yourself and just kind of give an idea. We usually do a pre-introduction to a guest, but I was actually intentionally wanting you to introduce yourself, because I know you have quite a mixed background in terms of where you come from and what you're about. And so I wanted you to actually just let that be delivered from your mouth to our listeners' ears.
Sure. Thank you so much, Hero. And thanks for having me, both of you, on this podcast. My name is Leon Elias Wu, and I am the founder of Sharp Suiting, now known as SharpeHaus. So we were founded back in 2014 when we launched a Kickstarter. We had started suiting various clients from the LGBTQ community directly on my couch in my Silver Lake condo. And we have had amazing amount of success in terms of just organic growth, revenue wise, as well as just publicity as well. Back in 2020, during pandemic, we actually at that moment knew that we couldn't do any or participate in any fashion shows. So basically what we did was we wanted to take our visual activism to another level. And what we did was something called the mixtape capsule, where we used modern day vocal artists into 80s music videos. And we did covers of these 80s songs that we chose, 3 of them. Yeah. And that essentially was us doing visual activism, not just through fashion, but through entertainment. So SharpeHaus has now become like our masthead or umbrella corp for just everything that we do in terms of visual activism, whether it's fashion or entertainment, because that's the core of the business. And that's why we started it, was basically to bring more visibility to our community through industries that have a lot of visibility.
Right. And also industries that probably could use more visibility.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, they're not the easiest industry to start a business in, but I do believe that there's a purpose. And my whole reason for starting Sharp Suiting was that I identify as an Asian-American trans man. And before my transitioning, I actually had a lot of issues finding clothing that fit me, not just my body, but also my identity. And, you know, I had a lot of issues just even like finding a good suit to interview in when I was in business school. And that's kind of when the whole idea of Sharp had come. I went on a business school trek to China with some business school friends, and a lot of them were bankers or finance people. So they had the experience of doing custom suiting and getting custom suiting made for themselves. And they're just like, why don't you just get a custom suit made? So, you know, I did at Sam's Tailor in Hong Kong, and it was like just the most extraordinary experience. I want to share that with my community.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm curious to know, with the name of Sharp, because it's a very common name, where did the name Sharp come from? Why that name? What's the empowerment behind it?
Yeah, so I have a history of performing as a drag king for 15 years, and I was actually part of the drag king troops and performed in and eventually produced a queer variety show called Bent here in Los Angeles.
Cool.
That, kind of a big hit for the community here and beyond. We had tons of people come out to that show. But my first drag name was Leon, which ended up becoming my offstage name or chosen name. And my second drag name was Trey Sharp. And so where Sharp comes from was from my second drag king character's name.
So you could be the House of Sharp. Perhaps.
House of
Sharp.
Yes. You know, in fact, you know, we had done like we had one intern or kind of like a more junior employee for a little while who did a lot of ballroom. And you know, we went to go watch him perform, and he had set up a whole row for us in this beautiful church here down in Inglewood. And he did put a little sign that said House of Sharp there.
I love that.
So for one night, we're definitely a House of Sharp. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I didn't even know. So are you from Los Angeles? Are you?
Pretty much raised here, but I was born randomly in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
We moved before I even turned 1. And then we did spend some time in my formative years from the age of 3 to 8 in a small town called Woodward in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting? Because when Hiro kind of introduced me to yourself and your platform and your business, I just assumed that you were from Vancouver, and I had no idea, you know, so maybe tell me what the connection is to Canada or to Vancouver or.
You know, like besides my mom visiting Vancouver often, I don't know, maybe she had a secret boyfriend up there. I don't know much about Vancouver. I have worked with people in Vancouver before on my various teams, especially my background before Sharp being in IT. I worked with quite a few people in IT in Vancouver, but Hiro and I actually connected via Instagram, and that's how you know, came to this podcast right here. So
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So to add on to Leon's answer to that, I believe Leon and Sharp, and I think it was, I can't remember which came up first because I don't actually know, was it your profile or your business's profile? It's probably your profile, and it said, suggested to follow. So when I took a look, that's how I found the connection and also found Leon's business, which was Sharp.
Okay.
And then, as Leon pointed out, we had our own individual connection, but I was chatting with Leon through Getting Juicy's Instagram handle. And then we took it onto our personal handles and then continued to go back and forth.
Right.
And there was just a lot in common there with our views on body and humanity, with the parallel of dressing and embodying yourself, and then gender and sexuality and mental health. And that's how I said to Leona, you'd be a great representative for the podcast, but someone to really educate folks on many things that we usually talk about: mental health, gender, sexuality, spirituality, self-care, and then also how we show up in the world, and with a very candid, uncensored lens. So to add on to that, when you were talking about your earlier years from 3 to 8 years old in Oklahoma, what do you remember about that time? Like how did that get you to where you are in the next step, kind of to the later parts of your childhood?
Well, so we were one out of two Asian-American families or Chinese-American families, or more specifically, in my case, Taiwanese-American family.
Mm-hmm.
So we're one out of two Asian-American families in our town.
Was it quite a small town?
It was very
population. Okay.
It was like a street and everything. So I don't know exactly what the population is. But I don't remember myself being seen as a little Asian girl during those years, right?
Right.
I don't remember experiencing much racism, but I did hear stories from my father and my brother about their experiences. And my biggest memory from that time period was that my parents had this huge walk-in closet, and one side was my dad's clothes, on the other side was my mom's clothes. And when people weren't looking, I would go in there and I would try on my dad's clothes.
Oh yeah.
A very big indication that I already had an identification with styling myself with masculinity. Either that or just like my dad's style more than my mom's style.
Yeah.
I would watch him put on his ties. I'd watch him shave in the morning, and I envisioned myself doing those things one day. I didn't connect myself to one day being like my mother. I connected myself very much to being like my father one day.
Interesting. And were you vocal about that with your parents at that time, or did it take quite a few years later to?
So I'm just be open about my age. I was born 1978. So
I'm not that far after you. It's okay.
Oh, okay. Wow,
well, 83. So it's anyway.
It's just a number, right? But it is also indicative of the time too.
Right, exactly.
That was like in the early 80s or so. There wasn't any trans visibility. I actually didn't know any transgender individuals until I turned 21, which was 2000. And that was after I graduated from college. I graduated out of UCLA. Within a year, after doing the corporate thing, I just needed a release. And I'm like, I can't be just doing this day by day. That's when I met my trans big bro, Max. And he was part of a drag king troupe in Los Angeles called Sugar Daddies. And two members of Sugar Daddies were planning to form their own troupe because there was just a lot of something, maybe bureaucracy, more oftentimes than not in the LGBTQ community, drama, within, right? So they were gonna, for whatever reason, they decided, hey, we're gonna go do our own thing, right? And I had known one of them. I didn't know Max, but I knew another member of that group that wanted to split off, and their name is T. And they, I saw them out at some club on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. They're like, hey, we're doing this drag king troupe, and would you like to be in our drag troupe, and I was like, I looked up to T a lot, who was like really handsome,
Yeah.
older butch, right?
Yeah.
Back then, identified lesbian, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course I want to be part of this. This sounds awesome,
Yeah.
And that, I knew a little bit about drag kings, but I didn't know, if I'd be able to perform, but I knew I wanted to, even if it was just on stage, style myself a masculinity.
Mhm.
And Max, my now trans big bro, is the one that used the word transgender, that he identifies as transgender. None of us had transitioned at that point. I mean, transition is a very broad term. I guess you can say identification is a part of transition too. So if that is, then yeah, that was part of our transitioning journey. But no one had any physical transitions as of yet,
Right.
So that was the first time I heard of the word trans, was when 21, and that was 2000.
Right.
There's no way for me to be able to have described it anytime before then.
That's a good point, just due to the timing, and just, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And when you talk about the drag king community as well, it's not necessarily as profiled as the drag queen community as well. So I think that's also a very interesting and profound community, because it is everywhere, and there are many performers, and there are many people that identify as trans or non-binary or not as how they were assigned at birth, who are expressing themselves through gender, through sexuality, through performance artistry. So in terms of that kind of community, what's that like in the LA or the California area? Because in Vancouver, I think there's got to be quite a lot of them, but I don't know any of them, for example. I only know a couple, but that might be
Here,
it.
you mean in the drag king community? Is that what
In the drag king
specifically?
community
Yes.
specifically.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, in my second troupe, there was so the second troupe, the first troupe was called the Lost Boys. That's the one I had mentioned, split off from Sugar Daddies and formed their own troupe, and I joined that one first, and that's where I named myself Leon on stage, which is now my name. But the second troupe was called the Beauty Kings, and the show that we performed in was called Bent, which I ended up later becoming a co-producer for. But within that group, the Beauty Kings, there was one drag king that is an amazing performer and is now cast on Dragula.
Oh, cool.
Really?
Yeah,
cool.
That drag king's name is Landon Sider.
Okay.
An amazing drag king. So there's been a lot of growth in that community, but not quite as much as I'd like to see, because you see a lot of drag queens on media and entertainment platforms, but we don't see many drag kings.
No. Have there been any drag kings on RuPaul? Probably not. Not yet. Yeah, which is interesting too.
I guarantee you that eventually that'll be their next kind of, not because it's not a gimmick, but that'll be their next thing to try and keep the show relevant and also more inclusive, because that they've done little things each of these past seasons where it's like the first trans male queen, like Godmick, the first straight queen, Maddie Morphosis. They'll continue hopefully diversifying, but as Leon is talking about Dragula, which is not a spin-off, it's how would you describe it? It's more based on kind of like the monster, spooky, kind of more theatrical drag concept. And I've actually never seen it, to be honest, which is surprising for my interest in reality shows and drag in general. But
but actually, I don't really know the specifics, but when I was in touch with Landon more, there was potentially some discussions about Landon joining in RuPaul.
Cool.
But I don't know the details of why that didn't work out. Maybe there weren't enough other drag kings in that performance caliber or quality to be able to compete, where it just be more than just one drag king and the drag queens, So that was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't know what the current situation with that is, because I have not been in the drag scene for a little while now.
Yeah. So taking it just to your activism and what you're doing now, was there someone in your life that was, I guess, a mentor for you, or somebody that influenced you to really get active in your community and do what you're doing now? Did your parents even have an influence on you? Like, how did you really get to doing what you're doing right now? Just, very inspiring.
Yeah, when I graduated from UCLA, I had, a couple neighborhoods that I could have been a part of. One is West Hollywood, obviously.
Mhm.
But the girls I was attracted to were in Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Echo Park area, which is known as East Side in LA. And those
Okay.
are the creatives, the
Mhm.
artists, the activists. So that is, I think, by following the crowd that I was more attracted to, um,
Right.
intellectually and physically, right? That's how I got into my activism, and I quickly, my crew was all union organizers and rally protesters, dumpster divers, so those are, I would hang out with them. That's how I got into activism. And in a sense, I feel like I've always been a little bit of an activist myself. Uh, Coming up to that point, very much more about being a leader in terms of equality and
Yeah.
representing than I had to present as a girl or a woman, because I didn't have the words to describe my actual identity.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of leadership positions. I was all about being, you know, um, more equal in that
Mhm.
regard.
Yeah.
Mm. No, that's a great point. And in terms of your transitioning, your discovery of yourself and the processes that went into it and might continue to be a part of it. When did you start transitioning? If that's an appropriate question to ask, like what was that process like for you to say, this is who I am, it's who I've always been, and I'm going to take the steps to really embody and embrace who have always meant to be. When did that start for you?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, like identification could be a step in
Mhm.
transition.
Mhm.
So that started as early as 21. Um,
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's very tough to determine in terms of identification and emotional transition when that actually
Mhm.
starts. Because you could also say at the age of 4 or 5, when I walked in the closet and started trying on my dad's clothes, that's, when I started to transition, right? Or I started to authenticate myself, really.
Right.
Because the only reason that we have to use the word transition is because I had to present as a girl before, you know.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that the appropriateness of that question, I'm glad that you asked that question. It's sometimes not necessarily appropriate question to ask a trans individual that. But I understand for education purposes, because we are in a position where we're trying to bring more trans visibility.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are definitely steps. You can also say, um, transition can start when you start doing therapy and you start to identify
Mhm.
or understand, right? In terms of actually taking steps like for physical or bodily or chemical transition, I started taking hormones, gender affirming hormones, July 1st of 2015. So that's now
Wow. Yeah.
what, 27 years ago.
Yeah.
On or so be 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Like I feel, I mean, I wonder, do you feel, because one of my best friends is trans, and she started transitioning not until she was in her 40s. And it was difficult because, I think, and I don't think I'm really putting words in her mouth necessarily, but there was a lot of her life that perhaps she feel like she missed out on because,
Mm.
because of her age, like she was born, I think early, probably a little earlier than you. And I wonder, like, do you feel like there's a part of your life that you missed because I guess it wasn't necessarily something that was so, I don't know if you want to say accepted or just known, I guess, back when you were, a kid growing up. And now it's just so beautiful that, people can now hopefully feel comfortable when they do feel like what you felt at those young ages to speak up and say something and say, hey, and then now there's resources and things like that for people, which is just a gorgeous thing. So I don't know if that is a question necessarily, but if you kind of know what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, so yeah.
Hold on for just 1 second though, because I'm
Sure.
about to run out of battery. So I'm gonna grab my charger real quick, make sure I charge. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Leon. No problem. Thanks. Yeah, it's such we just live in a very beautiful time, I think.
Yeah,
for people. I mean,
in terms of self-identification and having the language that has always been there, but now actually people understand and it's normalized. And normalizing doesn't always mean positive, but in this case, I would say it's more positive than say backward. It's progressive.
Well, then what's when Leon comes back on, but the statistic that you told me about, was it not millennials, Gen Z.
Yeah. And 21% of the population that is born in Gen Z identifies as LGBTQ+.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? And if only we were able to, polling people is such an odd way of putting it, but poll people in other age demographics, I bet you the percentage would even be higher than people would like to admit, even millennials or those types of things. But it's very interesting.
Okay.
Interesting statistic.
Yeah, very true.
Just a second. Now I've got you at this angle, but then there's a gleaming light. So 1 second.
All good.
I'm all about lighting.
That's all good.
No, that's totally fair.
Well, I love all the windows you have, the natural light.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my cottage. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful outside. There's like a lot of trees. We've got like 10 different types of fruit trees here. We have apricot, apple, orange, lemon, tangerine, avocado.
What?
It's crazy. Fig tree too.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
More. That was 8 that I counted, but I think
that's amazing. And I know now I'm getting off the topic what the question I asked, but do you actually eat the fruit off the trees too? Like,
I do. For the
that's amazing.
They're so small, like organic, right?
Yes.
Directly off the tree. There's really no point going into rinse it off when it's that small,
Yeah.
Yeah, that is if the squirrels don't get to it first, they oftentimes get to it.
That's a good point.
But yeah, to answer your question about do I feel like I missed out? Yeah, there is a part of me that relates to your friend, having transitioned later in life. So since I started transitioning or taking gender affirming hormones in 2015, then that was like in my late 30s, right? Mid to late 30s. So yeah, there's a part of me that I do look at current trans masculine individuals and them transitioning as early as high school now and getting, that whole experience of at least, college as, a young man or whatever, right? I do feel like I missed out on that experience. And I feel like also there's some physical benefits of transitioning earlier too, in terms of like how the gender affirming hormones work for you. I do feel like I'm quite lucky because on the other hand, if I was trans feminine and I was transitioning from male to female, that is another thing too. Like if they don't use hormone blockers and the dropping of the voice, it's hard to reverse that. Certain things. So like, I'd have to say that whether you're male to female or female to male, if you transition earlier, then there are sometimes that I wonder, like if I would have gotten more of the physical benefits. That said, and also the experience of going to college, having, gone through puberty during puberty.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because in a sense, when you transition even at a later age, it's a second puberty, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, there are experiences that I get to be a part of, having lived, you know, and identified as a lesbian for 15 years,
Right.
as a butch lesbian or a masculine of center lesbian, it was hard for me to even use that word before, you know, but now looking back, it's much easier. There are a lot of parts of me that are very proud of having lived that experience. Certain things that I wouldn't have learned, I probably wouldn't have had a real chance to explore feminism in a real way, you know?
Interesting. Yeah.
Than if I was just born male or assigned male at birth or transitioned earlier in
Yeah.
terms of taking gender affirming hormones earlier and having, you know, just been stealth earlier, you know? Would I, also the question is, would I have started sharp suiting or SharpeHaus
Right.
if I had gone through the experience that I did? So there are a lot of gifts that come with my specific and unique journey.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, in the future, if there's a way through AI or mindset, you know, to go back, you know, with the metaverse and just experience a different experience, like I would love to see what that experience would be like if I would have been able to transition earlier. But I love my memories that I have of this time in this world as well.
Yes. Wow, that is an interesting thought of what you just said in the metaverse. If we could do something like that, which I don't think is that far off from
I don't think
happening,
so
to be
either.
honest.
Yeah.
I really don't.
What is that one episode called? It's San Junipero from Black Mirror.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And what is it again? Say that again.
San Junipero from Black Mirror.
Oh, okay. Black Mirror.
You can actually,
Yes.
like, you know, when you retire or, you know, you're in retirement and you're kind of like winding down, you can actually put yourself in a different mindset.
Yes.
So,
Right.
I did. It's been so long since I've seen Black Mirror, but yeah, that's.
yeah. These two women
That's-
in the mindset or whatever contraption, they go back into the 80s and they're able to live this alternate life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Or relive
Yeah.
an alternate life.
Yeah. Well, now we're coming into like, okay, now we're getting on a very slightly different topic, but like AR, like augmented reality, which
Right.
you've heard of that perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
we have some interaction with, and whenever we have interaction ourselves with virtual reality, that's augmented reality. So like Pokemon Go, that's, you know,
right.
in this, you get to you get to change things, you get to collect Pokemon animals, and you know, you have some integrated impact into the game.
Yes, exactly. But imagine, because now, you know, with because I work in advertising, so we were just talking about like digital advertising, you know, one day we'll all have these, you know, goggles or glasses on, you know, staring at our computers, and there'll be an ad that'll come up, and the ad will have to be an integrative, like virtual reality or augmented reality ad where you're, you know, you press on the ad and then you're actually in, you know, let's say it's a sofa or something, and you're in the living room looking around at the sofa, and like you're, you know, you've got a freaking like an avatar of yourself, and you're sitting on the sofa, and you're, you know, or these meeting spaces, so like Zoom and things like that, you know, soon, I think it's already kind of happened, you can actually purchase different its for your Zoom meeting in your virtual office that people can see, things like that. Like, it's just wild.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It's crazy. And that's all like, yeah, that's all coming down the pipeline. Like, it's bizarre, very bizarre.
But that also brings it back in a sense to Leon with your business and what you do in terms of design and consulting. It's like with building on what Rachel said, if that eventually became a thing, then the ability to be right there with somebody and not even have a separate space, but like to actually be virtually in their space, somehow transmitting information, and what you're physically doing in virtual is actually in real time, you know, that can just open up tons of different ways to connect to people that might be so perhaps intimidated or scared, or living in environments where maybe it's still illegal or there's a death penalty or whatever, you know, barbaric consequences are for just being who you are. You know, that actually is really exciting to think of those prospects for any business that is trying to connect to so many different communities, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's going to be like another benefit of future trans kid generations, that they're going to be able to maybe use this kind of virtual or augmented reality to experiment. you know.
Yes.
That said, I think it's interesting because there's a lot of research about the development of our brains, and knowing that you are trans, or knowing the gender that you identify with as early as 3 or 4 years old.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's actually that part of the brain is developed much earlier than your adult decision-making brain, which comes later in your teenage years. So around
Interesting.
13, 14, or 15 is when you start to determine on your own what is right and wrong, and you have a more judicious kind of pattern of thinking, right?
Mhm.
But you actually know what gender you identify as early as age 3 or 4.
Right. Yeah. I have heard
So
that. That's, yeah.
a lot of friends and families and it will contact me and say like, oh, I have a friend and they have a kid, and you know, she just came out as trans, and they're having a hard time deciding what to do. Like, do they put her on hormones now,
Mhm.
or later? And that's a very interesting thing, because most people, I guess, before, or even now previously, would say, well, let them make their own decisions when they're 18. But if we're now saying that trans kids know that they are trans, or know that they are identifying with the gender opposite that they're assigned to as early as 3 or 4, kind of changes the conversation a little bit more, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even though this might be a
Uh-oh.
unsafe, but where the body in evolution, in terms of like when the body starts to go through pre-adolescence and adolescence, and those hormones start to become more heightened, is it they can people transition and actually be using hormones before that point or after? Or does it make a difference in terms of how it affects your health and your development, or is it not relevant at all?
I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because even though I'm of the community, I do pay attention to a lot of the things that are happening medically in terms of research and health
Mhm.
sciences for trans people. I'm not one of the activists who are more on that forefront.
That's fair.
They know
Mhm.
more, and even for them, we don't have much research yet for the trans community. So that's definitely something that we need to invest more in, because if we had more data, then we can make better decisions about and answer more questions like the one that you just posed. We just
Mhm.
don't have the research, the amount that we would like to have to make safe calls or decisions about that. So
Yeah. And I pray that that'll come. I think that's all coming, but I just pray that all comes so that maybe the people that are not accepting can hopefully then accept the science and because some people are they really, I think, just look for the facts or the data or those kinds of things. So I pray that that does come sooner than later, because I hope that that actually helps or assists a more accepting community, perhaps outside of the LGBTQ plus community. So
right. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Now I just want to, so just bring it back to your business again. So tell me, so what's exciting that's going on with Sharp right now, or what's, because you said you were just traveling. Were you traveling for work, I'm guessing?
Um yes. Well, it was half vacation and half
That's good.
work as always. I'm trying to do that so much. But let's see. What I just came back from was the first part of it was in New York. And I was actually there for a friend's wedding.
Nice.
And while I was there, there happened to be a friend of Sharp, who's now also like a partner,
Mm-hmm.
um, who was throwing an event called Cocktails and Couture,
Mm.
and wanted to partner with Sharp for this night, and invite a bunch of influencers and have people dress up and have all
Nice.
the bartenders wear Sharp clothing. So that
Mhm.
was a really nice event. It was raining that night,
Oh,
but we still had a great time. And a lot of people came out. They wore Sharp clothing, took a lot of pictures, And it was kind of a moment to celebrate because Anna Saba, who is the owner or manager of Cocteleria Perla Negra, which is in Harlem,
Okay.
is in the running to be on the cover of GQ magazine.
Wow.
And she's in the running to be on the cover of GQ magazine as the world's best mixologist.
Wow.
So
Oh,
we are supporting her and her business and
cool.
her, you know, her endeavor to be on the cover of GQ. And of course, if she does end up being the finalist, then we will definitely be there to style her for the
I was
GQ.
just gonna say that's exciting. How can I guess the public can't really, it's not like a voting or anything. It's whatever GQ decides, I guess, in the end, right?
Well, actually, it's a mixology. It's called
Ah,
ME competition, and whoever they decide. So great news is we just received word from her that she, out of 80 people, is in the round of 40 selected
great.
Nice.
finalists. So this is going to happen all the way until next February when they actually select the winner.
Right.
Uh,
Wow.
Oh, that
and
goes quite long.
yeah, because the next phase is now in the next 1 to 2 weeks. They're going to contact her and let her know when they're going to be in the area close to her market or bar,
Mm,
and go in and actually try her drinks. Right. So
that's fantastic.
we had a chance that night to try. She had 5 different mixed cocktails
Mhm.
that you get to try. And yeah, they're all actually quite good and very cool looking too, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
So we hope that she wins. And a lot of she's really actually not focusing too much on her queer identity as part of this endeavor journey, which I kind of respect.
Mhm.
Uh, by
Her
nature, of course,
talent.
queer, but it's more about her Greek heritage that she's into
Mm,
these drinks. So
Oh, wow.
so that's one thing. And then the other part of my 2 week vacation was I went to Yosemite, and I just got back on
nice.
Sunday, and that was for a festival called Some of Us, which was out in Yosemite. Actually rented one of those Sprinter vans and drove all the way up.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Great, it was a lot of fun. And this is a celebration that it's predominantly, I would have to say, trans MB women and people of color, um, just celebrating and having a bunch of workshops that are all about wellness. So I was
Mm,
there as the speaker on the allyship panel, as well as speaking on financial wellness, which is something that we do in Sharp anyways, as part of being design ambassadors, that we teach all of our design ambassadors how to build their business and just mentor
wow.
them to becoming financially healthy, right? So
Mm.
I gave a workshop on that, and it was just a great time. It was great vibes. Definitely recommend if you guys want to come down and check out the event. It's
It's really
sold
cool.
out like 3 months ago, and
Wow.
there are people already buying tickets for next year. So
Wow.
Wow.
it's a really great group of producers putting on this event. It's a mixture of like DJs from the LA as well as the Bay Area, and really great producers and promoters, and just a group of a lot of meaningful hosts from the community as well, and influencers that were there. And
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
I mean, I didn't get to go to every single workshop. That's not how I, you know, do things. I have my piece where I'm there, and I try to like have some time to myself too. And then, I go to maybe 1 or 2 other events per day. I'm not the type of person that needs to go to every workshop, but there definitely were people like that there. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it
no,
was a
that's fair.
good time.
That's
Oh,
awesome. And Leon, in terms of just kind of wrapping things up and getting to know a little bit more about yourself, what are some things that you might want to leave on with those that are following, that are discovering you, that you would like for them to know in our episode here? Anything relating to your brand or how they can contact you, and anything additional?
Yeah, I guess, after this trip to Yosemite, I guess I started to understand or wrap my hands around that my journey, I guess, in this life, in my existence, is really to build confidence in my community and beyond. And whether you are interested in a suit to do that, or interested in joining the Sharp team as a designer, or just interested in building more financial wellness and confidence in yourself in that area, I'm open. So feel free to DM me, and I'm happy to have a one-on-one with you. I do this because I like to heal the community, and in turn it kind of heals me as well. So I check all of my DMs, and if somebody needs to talk to me, then I'm happy to be there.
I love that.
And it's a very special gift to give to people, including you, to me as well. I can speak to that for those that are listening to Verify. Leon is a fantastic wealth of knowledge and resource, and also a very inspirational figure for humanity as a whole. So the fact that you keep your heart open, you keep your business open to people like that, I think is really rare. It's something that I definitely model myself after, just in my own life, and always there to show up for people. And I've had people say that about myself. So it's really great to see other people that are doing that as well, that are paying it forward, giving it back, and not necessarily with an agenda either, but just to be of service to people. We need more people like us out there, particularly that are in the, for lack of better terms, non-heteronormative or in the queer, BIPOC, non-binary, or alternative streams of community that maybe when we were younger, there weren't people like us to be here for those other people, where our hetero counterparts, and therefore really strong allies, might have had more benefit and access to, because there's this more acceptance. We're not in that generation anymore quite yet, but we're now getting to that point where there's a lot of people that we can look to, and that we're not alone anymore. And I think you're a great leader for that.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. So much. I really appreciate this podcast that you both do. It's magic. You both have some really great viewpoints, very inspirational to your listeners and your viewers, and anything I can do to help moving forward, happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, and vice versa. Thank you, Leon.
Absolutely.
It's such a pleasure to meet you. And all the very best. I just excited to continue to watch your journey.
Thank you. Likewise. Well, we'll watch each other.
Yes,
absolutely.
Not creepy like Big Brother.
No VR, AR happening without any consent.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Not like that police song. Well, maybe a little bit, but yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Leon, thanks so much for coming by. We wish you an awesome rest of your week, and we look forward to connecting with you very soon.
Thank you. Thank everyone.
Okay.
Bye, Leon. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Juicy.